We've all had those weeks when there just wasn't a lot of coin left in the old war chest when we get to hit our LCS or pull up our saved eBay searches. When I've found myself in that position, I like to start digging for those $10 to $20 books that I've overlooked during more lucrative times. Because, let's be honest, I would probably wind up blowing that $20 on something stupid if I didn't use it to buy a new comic anyway. Here are my top 10 comics on a $20 budget for the summer of 2023. Kicking off the list in the number 10 spot is Wonder Woman 188. Cover dated for March 2003, Wonder Woman 188 has one of the many Adam Hughes covers from this run. If you're not familiar with Hughes, he's on just about every shortlist when it comes to the best cover artists of the last 20 years, and he has a particular talent for drawing dynamic and attractive female characters. I chose this particular issue because the dark shadows and dim light contrasting with Wonder Woman's lasso kind of gives me vibes similar to that of Steve Ditko's cover to Amazing Spider-Man 28, where we meet the Molten Man for the first time. That said, there are numerous Hughes Wonder Woman covers in this run, most of which can be picked up for between $5 and $20, so if this one doesn't tickle your fancy, it's dealer's choice. Just pick out your favorite and put it on your list. Wonder Woman 188 will set you back just right in the neighborhood of $20 in the current market though. Next up, we have Fantastic Four Annual 25 in the number 9 spot. This annual from 1992 features the first appearance of the Anachronauts, a group of the greatest fighters throughout time. To put this academically, the Black Order are to Thanos as the Anachronauts are to Kang. So if Marvel continues with this whole Kang Dynasty plan, it's possible that we could see some version of the Anachronauts on the big screen. Dan Panosian was the cover artist for this issue, while Herb Trimpe handled the pencils for the Mark Gruenwald main story that was titled Twice Upon a Time. This story was part 3 of the Citizen Kang story arc that was playing out across several of Marvel's 1992 annuals. A copy of FF25 runs for right around $20, but I regularly find 90s annuals in discount bins, so I suspect if you dig deep enough and long enough, you can probably find a copy of this book hiding in there. I've talked about the Animaniacs before, but there's another troupe of zany cartoon characters from the early 90s that have found their way into the comic book world. There's no arguing that the Looney Tunes were an important part of a healthy after-school entertainment diet beginning in September of 1990, but our number 8 book, Tiny Toon Adventures Magazine number 1, had already snuck onto magazine racks 3 weeks before the show's debut, featuring the first comic book appearances of featured characters such as Buster and Babs Bunny, Dizzy Devil, Plucky Duck, Hampton Pig, Furball, Elmira, Fifi LaFume, and more. Tiny Toons brought the antics of the Looney Tunes into the modern era. The show would run for a total of 3 seasons, ending in December 1992, and the brand would see the release of a classic Nintendo game in December 1991. A copy of this magazine should only set you back about $15 right now, which is pretty cheap for a dose of 90s nostalgia. I've said it before, and I'm sure I'll say it again, but things got pretty weird in the 80s and 90s. Exhibit 237 for this argument is The Hobgoblin, but let's get into that in a second after I introduce our number 7 book, Web of Spider-Man 86. Web 86 was cover dated for March 1992, and the punchline for this issue is the Hobgoblin formally splits with the demon he had sought out to be possessed by, like that makes sense, but what this did was it left our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man with another goblin to deal with. So let's run all this down. In the Hobgoblin's first 9 years of existence, we had 5 different guys behind the mask, 2 of which were already dead at this point. We had a possession, and then finally we get a demonic doppelganger. But it wasn't all bad news because the character did get his own action figure in Marvel's first ever action figure line that was Mattel's Secret Wars. But to say the character was anything but convoluted by this point in time is an understatement. But now let's turn to the Demogoblin, who officially becomes his own entity in this issue, and would be included in 1993's Maximum Carnage, in addition to the Spider-Man and Venom Maximum Carnage video game that was released in the fall of 1994. The story, titled The Dark Within, was written by Howard Mackey and drawn by Alan Suviak, who also provided the cover art. While Demogoblin is most widely recognized as a late 80s, early 90s character, He did make a return in 2019's Absolute Carnage series, so don't count him out just yet. In the current market, a high-grade copy of Web of Spider-Man 86 shouldn't set you back more than $15 or so. And let's be honest, no Goblin collection is going to be complete without it. While it may be full-on summer as I record this video, I'm already looking forward to fall. And for me, fall quickly translates into Halloween and scary movies. With that in mind, for the number 6 book, we're looking at the first comic book appearance of one of the slasher genre's more unique characters. The number 6 book, Child's Play 2 number 1, wants to be your friend until the end. Cover dated for January 1991, Child's Play 2 number 1 is part 1 of a 3-part comic book adaptation of the movie Child's Play 2, and is the first story and cover appearance of Chucky. If you're not familiar with Chucky, he's a good guy doll, which is a non-copyright infringing version of the 1980s doll My Buddy that has been inhabited by the spirit of a serial killer. All Chucky wants to do is take over the body of a kid named Andy, but naturally people get in the way, and let's be honest, Andy isn't too keen about the plan either. What you wind up with is a homicidal doll with a temper unaliving people is both equal parts terrifying and hilarious. Child's Play 2 number 1 was published by Innovation, a publishing company from the late 80s and early 90s that produced a wide array of horror licensed properties such as Psycho and Nightmare on Elm Street in addition to Child's Play. This slasher legend's first appearance is one of the more affordable ones, as a high-grade copy can be had for just $10 to $15, which is well below the original $25 MSRP of a My Buddy doll back in 1985. Breaking into the top half of the list at the number 5 spot is Secret Warriors number 6. This September 2009 issue reveals Madame Hydra to be Contessa Valentina Allegra de la Fontaine. With Val already in the MCU and up to some shady things, I suspect that eventually we'll have such a reveal in an upcoming Marvel project. Her first appearance in Strange Tales 159 will put a dent in your wallet, but this reveal issue can be had for just $20 or less right now. On the creative team for this issue is a story that was co-scripted by Brian Michael Bendis and Jonathan Hickman, two of the 2000's best writers, while Stefano Casilli provided the interior pencils. The A cover was drawn by Jum Chong, but there's also a very groovy 1970s Decades variant for this issue that was drawn by Tom Coker. This variant is cheaper than the A cover, and honestly it looks like it would fit right in with some of Steranko's early Nick Fury covers from the late 1960s. Walking down the toy aisles in the 1990s was quite an experience. After years of lines like Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the secret to success was out. Cook up a toy line, cut a cartoon series, and print a comic book. Then sit back and watch the money roll in. Such is the jawsome origins of our number 4 book, Street Sharks number 1. Which Street Sharks number 1 though? The one from 1996. Wait, that's not helpful either? Okay, the brown one. Archie Comics tried really hard to find footing for the Street Sharks on the spinner racks in 1996, launching not one but 2 different series in the span of 5 months. Unfortunately for fans of the brand, neither series caught on, and they both lasted just 3 issues each. Volume 1 number 1 was cover dated for January 1996 and was the first comic book appearance for the Street Sharks. Characters making their debut include Ripster, Jab, Slamoo, Streaks, Benz, Slobster, and Slash. The creative team consisted of cover artist Frank Terran, writer Martha Moran, and interior artist Nelson Ortega. For whatever reason, the market has determined that all Street Shark number 1s shall be valued at $20 right now. I get it though. The cover for Volume 1 number 1 is noticeably weaker than the cover for Volume 2 number 1. I mean, what says sharks more than a cover seemingly set in a desert with a giant tank in the middle of it? There is no shortage of iconic covers in the Uncanny X-Men series, but iconic and budget-friendly are usually not 2 qualifiers that apply to the same book. Our number 3 book, Uncanny X-Men 251, checks both of these boxes. Mark Silvestri's unsettling cover depicts Wolverine crucified on a giant X that's positioned on top of a mound of skulls. As striking as the cover is, I think we do need to give a little bit of credit to a couple of other X-Men artists who'd previously riffed on this concept. First up is Neil Adams, with his rejected cover to X-Men 56, which, as far as I'm aware, is the first use of, or at least attempted use of, this idea. Next up is Paul Smith and his cover to Uncanny X-Men 169. It's considerably more subdued than what Adams had done, and also what Silvestri did here, but there's no doubt that there's a through line between these 3 covers. This November 1989 issue was written by Chris Claremont, and Mark Silvestri also had the interior art duties. Uncanny 251 is one of several late copper and early modern age issues of X-Men that caught a value bounce in the last couple of years and has managed to hold on to it. As of the recording of this video, you can find a high-grade raw copy of Uncanny 251 for between $15 and $20, but chances are if you buy just about any comic book collection, you're likely going to find a copy of it in there because literally everyone was reading X-Men in 1989. Believe it or not, there was a time when Warner Brothers did new and creative things with their intellectual properties with positive results. One of the best examples of that was not only a smash hit at the box office in 1996, but it also produced our number 2 book, Space Jam #1, published by DC Comics, which Warner Brothers had basically owned since the late 60s. This 52-page December 1996 issue is the comic book adaptation of the Space Jam movie. If you're not familiar with the plot, Space Jam follows basketball superstar Michael Jordan as he's pulled into a virtual world by the Looney Tunes characters, who need his help to win a basketball game against a group of alien invaders to avoid being enslaved in an intergalactic theme park. Together, they face off in this high-stakes basketball match, blending live action and animation to save themselves and restore freedom to the Looney Tunes world. Space Jam was released on November 15th, 1996, and finished its run at the box office with over $250 million, and it came in 10th place overall for the year, which included some other box office hits such as Independence Day, Twister, The Rock, Mission Impossible, and Jerry Maguire. Values on Space Jam #1 have been a little jumpy lately, but with some patience, you should be able to pick up a high-grade copy of this one for between $15 and $20. Topping the top 10 comics on a $20 budget list for the summer of 2023 is one for our buddy Spiegelhaus, Darkhawk Annual #3. I'm fortunate enough to know both Darkhawk fans in the world, and I'll give them credit, they stand by their man. Personally, I'm not much of a Darkhawk fan, but, I'll make an exception for Darkhawk Annual 3. This cover is awesome. If a 28-year-old J.J. Abrams was hired to design a comic book cover, this is what it would have looked like. We've got multiple lens or light flares coming off of Darkhawk's visor and armor, and this tight headshot design makes you feel like Darkhawk is right up in your face and about to whoop your ass. The 1994 annual was released on May 3rd, and it's the final annual for Volume 1 of the Darkhawk series. The cover was drawn by Todd Smith, while the primary story was written by Danny Fingeroth and drawn by Steve Ellis. This issue is noted as being fairly difficult to track down in the wild due to its lighter print run, but there's no shortage of copies on eBay at the moment. Sales are currently averaging right at $20 in the current market, but I can tell you, you can make the Darkhawk fan in your life green with envy when you pull a copy of this one out of a box for $3 like I did. I'm more than ready to start the fall top 10 comics videos, because when that happens, that means fall is on the way. I'm not a summer person, I'm ready for cooler temps, scary movies, and honestly, some of my favorite comic and collectible shows take place in the fall. Specifically, I'm looking forward to OFCON in Norman, Oklahoma in mid-September, and then the Kane County Toy Show at the end of October up in Kane County, Illinois. That said, up here next on the channel, we've got the big quarterly summer top 10, and after that I'll be mixing in some other content, including a product review for a newer item that I was excited to try out. as I'm finally back on schedule for the top 10s, and sooner rather than later, I'll be getting that 10K giveaway video going. So don't worry, I did not forget about that. Collect responsibly. I'll see you in the next video.